kill them all. That is the order that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reportedly gave before the military launched its first attack against alleged Venezuelan drug traffickers in the Caribbean Sea. And so then, when the initial strike left 2 men clinging to the smoldering wreckage of this boat, the commander overseeing the operation ordered another strike to comply with Hegseth's instructions. And so those 2 survivors, they were blown apart in the water. That is what we're seeing thanks to reporting from the Washington Post. And of course, all of this, it's coming as Trump seems closer than ever to authorizing military action on Venezuelan soil aimed at ousting the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. Right, and with Maduro, the White House claims that he's the head of a drug cartel that just recently got labeled as a foreign terrorist organization. Though very interestingly, you also have Trump announcing that he has plans to pardon a different Latin American president guilty of bringing more than 500 tons of cocaine into the US over 2 decades. And so, with so much to unpack, I want to start at the beginning with the first strike, which took place on September 2nd and killed 11 people. Because current and former officials within the US military and Drug Enforcement Administration, they have reportedly expressed doubt that everyone on board were actually involved in trafficking. I mean, one DEA official explained that with more people on board, it means less room for drugs to sell. And so they concluded that the 11 people, they may have been a mix of drug runners and illegally trafficked migrants. Right, and there are similar doubts about the identities of more than 80 people that have been killed in nearly 24 attacks since then. Also, Colombia's president has publicly accused the United States of killing at least 1 innocent fisherman, and lawmakers have said that even in classified briefings, Pentagon officials haven't given any specific names of traffickers or syndicate leaders that have been targeted. Also, one of the big things is that there are gaps in the videos that the administration has been releasing of the strikes. All while you have the Pentagon not fulfilling a bipartisan request from lawmakers to see the unedited footage. But again, also, and I know I sound like a broken record here, even if it was true, which we don't know right now that it is, that all of these people were drug runners, that wouldn't make what happened legal. Right, experts as well as current and former US officials have said that these strikes are illegal under US and international law, and they may open up those involved to future prosecution. Because understand, no matter what this administration is claiming, there is no imminent threat of attack, and the United States isn't in an armed conflict with the cartels. And the reason I stress these experts and the people with the experience is because there's a billion fucking talking heads, myself included out there, saying things. But you've got experts like a former military lawyer who previously advised U.S. Special Operations Forces and is now the director of the National Security Law Program at Georgetown Law, explaining that because there is no real war, killing any of these men in the boats amounts to murder. But also with that, he said, hey, even if the U.S. were at war with these traffickers, an order like the one that Hegseth allegedly gave to kill all of the boat's occupants, even if they were unable to fight, it would in essence be an order to show no quarter, which would be a war crime. Now with that, the Special Operation Commander overseeing the operation reportedly told subordinates that survivors were legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo. But in briefing materials provided to the White House, the Joint Special Operations Command reportedly said something different, right? Arguing that the follow-on strike had been intended to sink the boat and remove a navigation hazard to other vessels, not kill the survivors. And so with that, you had Democratic Representative Seth Moulton saying, the idea that wreckage from one small boat in a vast ocean is a hazard to marine traffic is patently absurd, and killing survivors is blatantly illegal, and adding, mark my words, it may take some time, but Americans will be prosecuted for this, either as a war crime or outright murder. We've also seen some more measured Republican pushback with, for example, Representatives Mike Turner and Don Bacon agreeing that if events went down as reported, it would have been illegal, but also they questioned whether it really happened that way. Right, and so then with that, you had the Republican-led Senate and House Armed Services Committees saying that they're launching inquiries into what happened, and then as far as Hegseth, you had him writing on social media, as usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland. But then with that, he didn't respond specifically to the allegations, and he actually affirmed that these strikes are specifically intended to be lethal. He also claimed, without providing evidence, that every trafficker killed is affiliated with a designated terrorist organization, insisting that current operations in the Caribbean are lawful under both U.S. and international law. And finally, adding in a separate post, we have only just begun to kill narco-terrorists. You then also had Trump saying yesterday that he believed Hegseth 100%, but also that his administration will look into the matter, and claiming that he wouldn't have wanted a second strike. But also, as we learn more about what's already happened, what might happen next is what's got a lot of people on edge, especially as Maduro may have lost his last chance to negotiate. Or you had Trump confirming yesterday that he had a call with Maduro a couple of weeks ago. And while he didn't give details, you had the Miami Herald reporting that he gave the Venezuelan president an ultimatum, saying something along the lines, you can save yourself and those closest to you, but you must leave the country now. And with that, according to the anonymous sources, the administration offered safe passage out of the country for Maduro, his wife, and his son, but only if he agreed to resign right away. But Maduro, he reportedly refused. Instead, it was reported that he asked for global amnesty for any crimes that he and his associates may have committed, which the White House rejected. And also, it was reported that he asked to keep control of the armed forces in return for giving up political control and allowing free elections to take place, which the White House, again, also rejected. And so then, not long after that, you had Trump saying in a Thanksgiving address that the U.S. would soon be taking action against alleged drug trafficking networks in Venezuela on land. With him then warning on social media on Saturday that the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela should be considered closed in its entirety. And to that, it was widely seen as strikes could be imminent. And while we wait to see what actually happens there, it's also worth noting that Trump has continued to undermine his administration's own claims that all of this has anything to do with fighting drug trafficking. I mean, just to start, Venezuela actually plays only a small part in the drug trade in America, according to experts as well as the government's own assessments. But also, you've got things like on Friday, Trump announced that he would be granting a full and complete pardon to Juan Orlando Hernandez. Right, he's the former president of Honduras who was convicted last year on drug trafficking and weapons charges and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Also, I gotta say, just listing the charges doesn't really do this guy justice. According to prosecutors, he ran a massive trafficking network that brought in millions for the cartels while keeping Honduras one of Central America's poorest, most violent, and most corrupt countries. And overall, they said that the scheme had lasted more than 20 years and brought more than 500 tons of cocaine into the United States. But you see, Hernandez, he claimed, oh, I'm just a victim of political persecution, which apparently appealed to Donald Trump. And actually, in Trump's post announcing his intention to issue the pardon, he said that Hernandez has been, according to many people that I greatly respect, treated very harshly and unfairly. Right, and saying if this conviction stood, quote, you could do this to any president. And so, it kind of seems like Trump connects to this, sees any kind of president that is being, I don't know, held accountable as a kindred spirit. But then, next up in the news, I'm very interested to know your thoughts here. This college essay just got an instructor suspended, and it's now sparked a national fight over whether we're looking at a free speech crisis or it's just a terrible paper. So at the University of Oklahoma, you have this student, Samantha Fulnecchia, and she's studying psychology. And in one of her psych classes, she was tasked with writing a reaction paper regarding societal perceptions of gender. In Samantha's paper, it heavily referenced God and the Bible to make a case for why traditional gender roles are important. But then, out of a possible 25 points, you had Samantha getting a 0, and there you had the instructor writing, I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead, I am deducting points for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. And adding, using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology, etc., is not best practice. Well, a second instructor for the course also backed that grade up. Samantha, she wasn't happy with this and argued that her free speech rights were violated. So she reportedly filed a discrimination complaint and grade appeal, with her telling the Oklahoman to be what I think is clearly discriminated against for my beliefs and using freedom of speech, and especially for my religious beliefs. I think that's just absurd. Right, in this story, it really took off when the school's Turning Point USA chapter posted about it, and they claimed that the instructor who gave the grade was trans, with them writing, we at Turning Point OU stand with Samantha. We should not be letting mentally ill professors around students. Clearly, this professor lacks the intellectual maturity to set her own bias aside and take grading seriously. Professors like this are the very reason conservatives can't voice their beliefs in the classroom. But also, not everyone's on her side, because you had both Turning Point and the Oklahoman publishing Samantha's essay. And so now you have some thinking that the paper, it really never deserved a strong grade to begin with. I'll include a link so you can read the whole thing yourself, but it starts by saying, this article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. And then adding, God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. God is very intentional with what he makes, and I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. Right? And then it goes on to say, society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be whatever they want to be is demonic and severely harms American youth. I live my life based on this truth and firmly believe that there would be less gender issues and insecurities in children if they were raised knowing that they do not belong to themselves, but they belong to the Lord. Right? And so with this paper, you had many just not impressed, thinking it didn't meet the standards of a college-level psychology class, and they ended up siding with the professor's grade and justification for it. Right? And there you had some arguing that right-wing cancel culture has gone off the rails, with some saying that it feels like she wrote a bad paper on purpose to get the attention of TPUSA and turn this into a whole culture war thing. But again, Samantha had a ton of people in her corner. I mean, the situation even got the attention of the governor of Oklahoma, who wrote, the First Amendment is foundational to our freedom and inseparable from a well-rounded education. Adding, the situation at OU is deeply concerning. I'm calling on the OU regents to review the results of the investigation and ensure other students aren't unfairly penalized for their beliefs. And yesterday, you had the school releasing a statement saying that the instructor in question had been placed on leave. And so while the school didn't name Samantha or anyone involved, it did say that it takes First Amendment rights seriously and began a full review of a student's complaint. Then with that, saying that the school has been in constant communication with the student over her grade appeal, and adding that the process resulted in steps to ensure no academic harm to the student for the graded assignments. And then regarding the discrimination claim, time, you had the school noting that the graduate student instructor had been placed on leave, then noting a full-time professor is serving as the course instructor for the remainder of the semester, and then adding that the school is committed to fairness, respect, and protecting every student's right to express sincerely held religious beliefs. Then all of that, it opened up even more backlash from people who thought that the instructor was totally fair in the grading process. People saying that the paper deserved a bad grade, and then it's also opened up a larger conversation about politics, religion, and education, and how these ideas have really been clashing lately. And with that, you had some saying things like, one of the many problems Charlie Kirk made significantly worse was convincing some of the least intelligent, thoughtful, qualified students that they could just say, well, the Bible says, and then proceed to misquote or not even cite the Bible and get out of doing their homework. And, that Kirk comparison, it ends up being interesting here, not just because of how involved TPUSA is in this situation, but also because, there are a ton of these educational clashes becoming more prominent following his death. There were tons of people who were fired or faced some form of disciplinary action over comments that they made about him, and educators were especially impacted by this. And in recent weeks, there have just been tons of headlines about teachers taking legal action and suing because of those firings. It doesn't feel like this space is going to calm down for a number of reasons, including, you've had some pointing to the fact that TPUSA actually has a professor watch list to, quote, unmask radical professors. And there you had one of the professors on that list previously saying to NBC News, when you step in the classroom, you might as well be in the studio. People are going to record what you're saying. They may publish it, they may take it out of context, they may share it with your enemies. Anything can happen now, and it frequently does. But also, I'll say the impact, it goes further than just kind of the cancel culture element here, because you have things like in Ohio, the House there actually passed the Charlie Kirk American Heritage Act, which, quote, works to preserve the ability for educators to discuss the positive impact of religion on American history. And there you have critics seeing that as legislators using Kirk's death to insert Christianity into the classroom. But with that, I'll also say you can't pin everything here on like Charlie Kirk or TPUSA, because it's not the case. There have long been attempts to kind of intervene in the classroom, especially from the right. And if anything, this feels like kind of just the latest chapter of it. As we wait to see how this plays out, I would love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions, right? Do you think what the professor did there, the grade, that was fair? Is it a free speech violation? Any thoughts at all? And then we're going to dive into more in just a minute. But first, let me say, it is still technically fall here, and it's stacked with football, basketball, hockey, concerts, like Jonas Brothers, Lorde, John Party, and more. It's all happening, and we've been giving out $500 every week for over a year thanks to our sponsor at SeatGeek. And somehow, some of y'all still haven't entered for free, which feels crazy because it's been awesome seeing so many of you beautiful bastards win the $500 SeatGeek weekly giveaway and use it to hit up concerts, games, Broadway shows. Like, y'all just living your best lives. And if you haven't entered yet, it takes 2 seconds, and next week's $500 winner, it could be you. And for the uninitiated, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads and tickets to over 70,000 events, sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it. And so if you're a first timer, download the app, scan the QR code, or hit that link in the description and use code Phil for $20 off your first ticket purchase. And then for you and for everyone, this is key, add code DeFranco to your SeatGeek account. You add that as well, and it gets you $10 off any ticket and enters you in for a chance to win the weekly $500 giveaway, no purchase required. So yes, to all the SeatGeek vets out there, that applies to you too. Just add code DeFranco to your account and you're entered. So hey, scan that QR code or click the link below and use codes Phil and DeFranco and go make some memories. But then next up in the news, we should talk about, especially after this long holiday weekend, how Trump is using the National Guard shooting to further his immigration crackdown to the point that some are calling it insane. Because quick recap, on Wednesday afternoon, 2 members of the National Guard were shot at close range in downtown Washington, D.C. And the 2 troops were Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf and Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, both from West Virginia and deployed to D.C. as part of Trump's crime crackdown. So they'd been in the city since August. And then after the shooting, both victims, they were taken to the hospital where Beckstrom died and Wolf remains in critical condition. So one of the 2 is still alive despite conflicting reporting when everything first went down. Now, as far as the shooter, they were later revealed to be Ramalullah Lakhanwal, an Afghan man who worked with the CIA and what was known as the Zero Unit in Afghanistan before the U.S. withdrew from the country back in 2021. We also know that he was wounded during the shooting and he was taken to the hospital, although his exact condition isn't clear at this point. And we also don't know for sure why he did this, right? The authorities are still investigating a motive. But that said, they have started piecing together his life, especially since coming to the U.S. from Afghanistan, right? And so according to interviews with his family, Lakhanwal struggled with PTSD stemming from his time fighting overseas, and he was really struggling to assimilate to the U.S., saying that he was having trouble finding a job and feeding his family. And those problems were further exacerbated by the death of a commander that Lakhanwal is said to have thought highly of. And with all this, you also had Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying that he was radicalized after coming into the U.S., and she pointed a finger at the Biden administration. Noem saying the Biden administration failed to properly vet Lakhanwal, though it is worth noting that his asylum application was approved by the Trump administration earlier this year. And then with that, well, all of this is still a developing situation. We do know that Lakhanwal is facing 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of assault with intent to kill while armed. Also, as far as connections, notably, there hasn't been any specific evidence tying Lakhanwal to a terrorist organization yet, and there haven't been any terror charges brought into the conversation as of now. Right, and that, despite Trump's assertions that this attack was, quote, an act of of terror. But also a huge thing is that this attack has now prompted Team Trump to ramp up the immigration crackdown a couple of notches. And specifically, you had the director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announcing USCIS has halted all asylum decisions until we can ensure that every alien is vetted and screened to the maximum degree possible. The safety of the American people always comes first. And that, it came just hours after Trump promised to permanently pause all immigration from what he called third world countries, saying on Truth Social on Thanksgiving that this was necessary to, quote, allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's autopen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States. Now with that, there's not a whole hell of a lot of details right now. We don't know what countries will be included, at least as of recording, though DHS has pointed to a travel ban list from back in June that mostly included countries in the Middle East and Africa. You also had Trump going on to say that his government will deport any foreign national who is, quote, non-compatible with Western civilization, and adding, only reverse migration can fully cure the situation. You know, that it's not a new idea even for Team Trump, who earlier this year had the State Department floating the idea of creating an Office of Remigration, with the idea being that American society can only actually be saved by the departure of certain migrants, illegal or otherwise. And we've actually already seen some action on that front, with the government promising to re-examine the status of green card holders from 19 countries of concern, including Afghanistan after Wednesday's shooting. And as you might imagine, every aspect of this has sparked a debate and backlash. You had 2 UN agencies quickly jumping in to urge the US to continue accepting asylum seekers, with the UN Refugee Agency spokesperson saying in a statement, the people who need protection arrive in their territory, they have to have a due process of asylum, and then they have to have access to territory, with her then adding that the vast majority of refugees are law-abiding citizens. And that was echoed by the UN Agency Human Rights Office spokesperson, who also added they are entitled to protection under international law, and that should be given due process. Then from there, you saw criticism and concerns spreading, including those worried about Afghan residents being targeted in this newest crackdown wave. Right, and so you had the Council on American Islamic Relations saying, using this horrific attack as an excuse to smear and punish every Afghan, every refugee, or every immigrant rips at something very basic in our Constitution and many faiths. The idea that guilt is personal, not inherited or collective. And so for now, this is going to be a space to watch, not only because we're going to see it play out, but also because, you know, any legislation or executive order to back these threats up, they're going to be met with legal challenges. So this is absolutely just the beginning. And then there's more we're going to dive into in just a minute, but first, a quick self-promotion, self-sponsorship. It's Cyber Monday. I'm going to extend this through the week, but right now, if you go to beautifulbastard.com, you can get pretty much everything 60% off. And this sale is on our premium Beautiful Bastard gear. The great custom cotton spandex blend, the premium hoodies, it's all there. And well, we were going to be doing a sale anyway. We're switching warehouses, it's a whole thing. And so rather than pay to move stuff and like just lose money that way, I'd rather you guys just save a bunch of money, take advantage of it, and we empty out stock that way. So yeah, grab what you want while you can. I mean, there's like $15 t-shirts. It's stupid. Yeah, limited stock, so grab what you want while you can. And then jumping back into the news, this one's a little bit different. This one's kind of fun. You've been waiting for it, obsessing over it, waking up in a cold sweat going, what's it gonna be? And the Oxford University Press has spoken, and 2025's word of the year is
rage bait.
Rage bait.
Rage bait.
Whereas a rage bait is, taken literally, a compound of a violent outburst of anger and an attractive morsel of food. But also, as Oxford actually defines it, rage bait is, quote, online content deliberately designed to elicit anger or outrage by being frustrating, provocative, or offensive, typically posted in order to increase traffic to or engagement with a particular web page or social media account. So like 75% of content on the internet or 99% of everything on X. Now, interestingly, the first recorded use of the term, it goes back to 2002 when it referred to a particular type of driver reaction to being flashed at by another driver requesting to pass them. But then in the 2010s, it evolved into internet slang for viral tweets, and since then it became a mainstream term for content in general. It's even generated spin-off terms like rage farming, a more consistent use of rage bait to manipulate reactions and build engagement over time. The rage, not the only thing being farmed. There's a vast field being cultivated, right? I mean, one of the runner-ups for word of the year this year was aura farming, with that defined as the cultivation of an impressive, attractive, or charismatic persona or public image by behaving or presenting oneself in a way intended subtly to convey an air of confidence, coolness, or mystique. Though that, it's only kind of emerged over the past couple of years, and it kind of surged this year thanks to that viral video of that 11-year-old Indonesian kid just looking effortlessly cool as he danced on a boat. Also, as far as other word of the year contenders, there was biohack, a verb meaning to attempt to improve or optimize one's physical or mental performance, health, longevity, or well-being by altering one's diet, exercise routine, or lifestyle, or by using other means such as drugs, supplements, or technological advances. And there you had Oxford attributing that to the growing attention toward rich dudes trying to reverse the aging process or turbocharge their mental and physical performance. But you know, in the end, rage bait, it took home the gold, reportedly after Oxford considered a combination of votes, sentiment, a public commentary, and an analysis of lexical data. Or the university announcing that the usage of the term, it tripled over just the last 12 months. And also, yes, I know, rage bait is 2 words. But Oxford, they insist that they're not trying to rage bait you with that. Instead, they explain that the word of the year can also be an expression. Also, since we've already talked too much about this, let's dive even deeper. We should also distinguish rage bait from a few other similar concepts like trolling, which is done more for amusement than financial gain or engagement. It's also not the same as clickbait, which is done for financial gain or engagement, but not necessarily by provoking anger. And then, of course, there is some conceptual overlap between rage bait and hot take, but the latter doesn't always have to provoke anger or seek money or engagement. So rage bait, it seems kind of perfectly sculpted to isolate one very specific phenomenon that has turned social media into just an awful place to be. Or as one media studies professor explained to CBS News,
so this is the easiest emotion to attack because fear and anger are the easiest to approach. Most of social media is a compulsion. We don't have to post. It's something that we do because we want to share our voices and the opportunity is there. But when somebody posts something that angers you, you almost feel like you have to right the wrong. And so that's a tactic. It's tactical media.
But also, it's not just rage bait. If you look at Oxford's past several words of the year, you start to notice a pattern. Like in 2024, it was brain rot, the supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially viewed as the result of overconsumption of material, now particularly online content, considered to be trivial or unchallenging. Then in 2022, it was goblin mode, which is a type of behavior which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typically in a way that reject social norms or expectations. And then back in 2020, Oxford couldn't pick just one word, but some of the ones that they highlighted included doom scrolling, covidiots, and infodemic. And so really, like when you put all of these concepts together, it paints a pretty grim picture of the state of our culture. But it feels like it's saying we're all just lazy, selfish, raging, brain-rotted goblins wasting away our waking lives and algorithms that manipulate our emotions with an overwhelming torrent of factually questionable information. But that said, I should add that the increase in our usage of these terms doesn't necessarily mean that the phenomena that they point to has increased. Rather, as the president of Oxford Languages noted, their usage could just also signal that we're becoming more self-aware and developing specific terms to describe the ways that online media affects us. But also, I'll say for some of the words, their popularity does appear to stem from particular real-world events. Like for example, Cambridge Dictionary's word of the year for 2025, it was parasocial. That's a term that describes the one-way relationships that people develop with celebrities that they don't personally know. And that is believed not to have been created by, but taken off in large part thanks to the engagement of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. But then also, right, you do also have things that elude kind of rational explanation like 6'7". Though, and I'm gonna get hate for this, I don't mind 6'7". Do I think it's nonsensical and dumb? Sure, but I'm an old man shouting at clouds. And compared to everything else that takes off, it's like an inside joke for every fucking kid that exists and it doesn't punch down. At least yet, we always tend to ruin things. And so I think it's the job of all my fellow parents out there to embrace 6'7", to the point that your kids roll their eyes about it and go like, oh, I hate that. And actually on the note of 6'7", that is dictionary.com's word of the year for 2025. But yeah, with all that said, yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts on the beauty, or I guess the horror of human language. But personally, I love stuff like this. The language that we use, I think it showcases the emotional baggage that we have recently accrued as we kind of try to navigate our lives. But that, my friend, is the end of this video. Of course, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions and reactions to anything we covered today, but I want to end with a little housekeeping. First thing is today is actually my 40th birthday, which feels insane to say out loud. And I know for some of y'all that also might feel crazy for you. Some of you have been watching for 10, 15, almost 20 years I've been doing this. Well, of course, I love the newbies as well. Thank you for being part of the most consistent thing that I've ever done in my life. And I guess in a certain way, it's probably one of the most consistent things for a lot of y'all. Separate from that, though, it hits on the note of consistency. We've got a good week lined up for you this week. Are you getting the Philip DeFranco show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Thursday is going to be we'll call it fun one. I'm going to be traveling that day, but we're going to figure it out. Then, of course, on Wednesday, there's going to be that new Crashing Out podcast. It's been one of my new favorite things to do this year. And then on Thursday, there's going to be the brand new In Good Faith podcast. We haven't locked the schedule down there. It's kind of been Tuesdays, Thursdays, a little sporadic. So look forward to that. And or if you haven't checked those things out, definitely check it out. Go subscribe. They're great. And you can even get a taste of the latest episodes right here, or I got links in the description. But really, no matter what you do, let me just say thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.